You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, welcome to The Bounding Box. Today, I'm joined from a friend overseas here. I got Arno Fiva. So, Arno, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, what's your problem.
Hi, Renee. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, as you said, my name's Arno Fiva. I work in the Esri R&D center here in Zurich. My role is a developer evangelist, specifically for the 3D Maps SDK for JavaScript. And in this role, I basically promote, on one hand, custom development for the web, and of course also 3D, because yeah, that's kind of what we look into here in Zurich. We work on a bunch of products. It is an R&D, so on one hand we have quite a bit of product or base technology development going on, such as the JavaScript SDK that is used in other Esri products. We also have Urban being developed here, City Engine as products. Yeah, and then we, of course, also look into some more researchy topics, which is, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I mean, Urban and City Engine might be a couple of things that your average, like ArcGIS Pro or old ArcMap user, might not be too familiar with them. Can you just explain what those are real quick? Just kind of run down, who would use them and why?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, City Engine is actually the product that the company, before it became an Esri R&D, built when the company was still called Procedural. City Engine is really a software that produces 3D data from basically takes OpenStreetMap as an input, like parcels and streets. And from that, you can give it a bunch of rules and it will generate 3D buildings from that. This is something that has been used quite a bit in the entertainment industry for films. But of course, now more and more for cities, especially where you want to have 3D data, just to give some context for your applications. City Engine is a desktop application. Urban is a web application that bases on the Maps SDK for JavaScript and is tailored for city planning specifically. Where you can visualize a bunch of regulation rules for urban planning and visualize some of your proposals within that and validate it. Also used, of course, for communication.
Nice. Yeah, City Engine is cool because I know it was used like in movies like Big Hero 6 and a couple other animation films and stuff like that. And every now and then there'll be a blurb about it at like UC or maybe even Dev Summit will get a small blurb about, used in this movie. But they don't tout it a whole lot. Maybe in Zurich you guys do, because I know that the tech scene over there is very much into that. But I always was curious why they don't. I guess maybe because that's not the main customer base that Esri's got and stuff. It's more government or local agency. But I think it's cool. It's really awesome that it's used in those places.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, we always mention, for example, when someone applies, because it's kind of cool, you can relate to it. You can kind of show off like where it's being used. I think the issue is that we're not always allowed to say because of licensing or
that's probably right. I mean, you can't show like the big poster probably on the screen or something, right? So
yeah, we have a few posters here in the office hanging, but not all of them are public.
That is cool, man. Yeah, that Urban's a cool project. I would have liked something like that when I was working like local government, because I mean it just gives you a whole new aspect. You're looking at planning out new developments, or even when like a city is and one thing I worked in a lot was when new developments are coming up, and you had to like plan out utilities, right? Like how are you going to run utilities to all these different developments and new homes and businesses and stuff. And just getting that underground network in a 3D environment would have been really cool to see.
Yeah, I think Urban is a really nice example of how web tech can be tailored and really make a difference in the user experience. It's a complex topic, but if you put the time into a user interface that makes sense, that is tailored specifically for this use case. It shows how you can really build nice applications to solve problems in a well, I mean, in an easier way than what we used to probably do on paper or
Yeah.
with other tools. And yeah, so Urban is one of those examples. One really nice example of a web app based on the JavaScript SDK. And of course, that's the one thing that we promote is that, hey, you can really build nice applications with our tools, based on top of ArcGIS, with the technologies that we provide.
Yeah, it's really neat. And I always tout this, and people have heard me talk about it probably a million times at this point. But just the basic thing idea of like the view shed that I believe is you can do easily in the SDK, right? You click a point in a 3D environment, and all of a sudden you get this great view shed from everywhere visible. Well, I guess everywhere you can see from that point, that vantage point, and it's shown on the map, right? And those are the kind of scenarios that would take me like 3 days to do, and then probably another like 2 weeks of review for someone to go, oh, well, can you move it over, to this office over here? Say I'm in this other office, what can I see? Or if I were to raise this light pole or this light at this facility like 10 feet, how many people are going to be bothered by it? Right? Just all this back. Now you build an app and just have the user just move it, right? They'll just click something, maybe adjust some sliders, and bam, you got all these great tools they're using instantly.
We have a bunch of tools. I knew you were going to bring up the viewshed because that's the one tool. That's actually one tool we don't yet have in the SDK in 3D.
We don't have we don't have the widget for it, but you can do it. We have a sample that does it with the geoprocessing task and everything, right?
Yeah, it's server side, but it just takes the terrain into account. And we have a bunch of users asking for a viewshed, and yeah, we have it on the roadmap. We plan to work on it in the near future. It's just that just right the next two releases it didn't quite make it in.
We have the line of sight. So line of sight's also
I see what
similar,
you're doing here.
Right? Line of sight's similar, but it's just like a direct, like if you're standing over here and I'm standing here, can I see you? Right? Like that's great for surveyors, right? If you need to plan out a survey you're going to do or something like that, and you need to know that, oh, I'm gonna be standing over here, and then you're gonna have the plumb over here in this area. Am I gonna be blocked by some building or something? We're gonna have to like navigate all these different areas. Where it's a great planning tool in that particular case. I can see surveyors getting use out of that, right?
No, exactly. I mean, that's and that's what we try to provide is these building blocks to really create these tailored experiences in the web where you don't have a big piece of software that does a whole bunch of things but you can like specifically throw in a tool like the line of sight or shadow analysis, and you just with a single slider you can kind of see what, for example, what shadow cast you have in specific days throughout the years. For example, for a new project or for the existing ones, if you just go in, select the 3D base map, you see your building, your house, and you can see what shadow it throws throughout the year.
That's pretty cool. I could see like new office buildings going up that would upset neighbors, something like that, if it's going to be blocking their sunlight particular times of day or something.
Always
like
a topic in the city.
Now, in terms of like you're talking about the cool stuff you can do in 3D, what kind of assets can I bring in 3D? Now, I'm not too familiar with like the models. If I know like GLTF is like one type of asset I can load into my 3D my scene, right?
Yeah. So I think there's two sides. There's two sides of this, especially if you're kind of new to 3D. You might know ArcGIS from the web map and 2D maps. I think on one hand, it's important to point out that a lot of the things that we do in 3D work exactly the same way they do in 2D. So if you have feature layers and you want to drop them into your map in 3D, you drop them into the scenes, but it basically works the same way, and you visualize them, you interact them with them in similar ways. And then we also provide a bunch of ready-to-use assets or let's say symbology to visualize this data. So, for example, if you have polygons in 2D, you would visualize it with a fill symbology. In 3D, you can do the same using extruded, and then all of a sudden you have 3D buildings in a way, or 3D assets in your scene just by extruding these polygons. And yeah, of course, you can also visualize points, for example, with GLTF symbols. So GLTF being kind of like the standard 3D format for web applications. And yeah, we do that often, for example, to visualize trees or different various assets in a city, like lampposts or street signs. And yeah, since recently now we also support that you can upload your own assets. So really 3D models, also beyond the GLTF formats, so also some of the more commonly used formats in 3D, yeah, generally in 3D, like OBJ or more from the BIM world. We support uploading IFC models directly into your scene layer or your web scene.
So basically, if I'm like if I work in 3D like BIM, I suppose, right? Would I use a tool like Blender or something like that to create a model? Then I can output that to that format and bring it directly in.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
you can export it directly as a GLTF, and you could upload the asset where it's somewhere accessible in the web, and you can just visualize. For example, if you have a point feature layer or a point scene layer, you can basically tell it to just use that GLTF model to visualize these points. Or you have a scene layer, a 3D object layer, and you upload that directly through the editor widget. And there it can also be in an OBJ or a USD
Nice.
prototype, and it will also take over all the materials. So if in Blender you have you create a model with nice windows, transparent, or some metallic surfaces, also emissive light, for example, if you have textures that have emissive properties, that you will see that in the web scene as well.
That is cool. I played around with some dumb stuff like bringing a bunch of rhinos in for my points, stuff like that. Just going down the street, which is kind of cool. It's a nice visual.
Sure, for sure. That's a movie, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of zoo animals run through the street.
Zoo animals getting down the street, right? What are some other cool things that people can do in 3D? I mean, you mentioned like everything you do in 2D, you can do in 3D, which is really neat. Like the extruding and stuff. I think it's Sajid made a really cool app when 3D for air quality, where I think he had a slider that would play over time, and the polygons were the areas for the city, I guess maybe blocks, where the air quality would go up and down. He had like the extruding dynamically and stuff like that. That's really neat. What are some other interesting things that people that might be working in 2D might want to try out in 3D?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Sajid does a bunch of really nice apps. I have to say, just recently brought out one from Tokyo, where you see live buses riding around in the city, which is pretty cool. What I guess the main topic we focus here in the R&D is specifically urban visualizations, urban use case. So not urban as a product, but just like the city in the context of a city. And I mean, the use cases can be from thematic visualizations to realistic visualizations, especially if you have something like realistic integrated mesh, which is basically the correspondence to satellite imagery. It also has the 3D geometry of a city, and you visualize your data within that city. And it really just makes things more relatable, because our world is in 3D, and if you want to convey a message, if you want to tell a story, it can help to do that in 3D and show it in the context, for example, of the houses you have in your near vicinity. to understand what it really means. I think one of the main use cases we see is definitely, for example, showing analysis output, for example, for floods to show the effects of floods within yeah within a city or within a residential area, which is really impressive with some of the if you combine it with some of the effects. And yeah, I guess we also every now and then do some a bit more creative or more how should I say off the beaten track topics. Like for last Dev Summit, we did this ski resort app where we visualized a bunch of the data that they collect within the regular operations of a ski resort when they plow the slopes, and they basically measure the snow depths every night when they go over the slopes. And we got a bunch of that data, which was really nice. And we created a 3D app out of it, and showed how you could potentially visualize a bunch of this data in 3D. They use this data already in 2D to optimize, for example, the production of fresh snow. And yeah, we kind of did a case study how that would look like in 3D,
That was a
which
cool
makes a lot
demo.
of sense with the terrain and everything.
Yeah, that was a fun demo. I really enjoyed that one. That was cool. Did that the one that had the snow falling and everything in the demo?
Yeah, we had the weather effects, of course. We had also some snow groomers that were running around in the scene that were hooked up to a stream layer. That was nice.
That's neat. Yeah, the you mentioned flooding. That's a really cool one because and I worked in county. I worked for sanitation, and we had storm drains and sewer lines and everything. So we used to have to do these analysis of like what what manholes or what sewers were at risk of overflowing when there was a flood, right? Inland, a certain amount. And when you do them, you get these weird patches sometimes along the coast where there'd be no flooding. And if you just look at a 2D map, you can't necessarily tell. But if you threw that in a 3D environment, you could easily see that there's like some hills or something in the area that aren't going to get flooded or whatnot. Versus looking at like a 2D map, even aerial, it's not super easy to see exactly why the flood maps look the way they do in those particular cases, which is kind of neat. I would have liked to have done that in 3D because I think it would have been easier for the stakeholders to see exactly what was happening in that particular case, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we also hear that a lot. That like, hey, I would like to do 3D, but I don't have the data. I don't have like like for example the elevation or the 3D data of buildings. And the thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the most realistic to already create something that's relatable, that's maybe easier to understand than a top-down view. And that's where I would really just recommend to try out visualizing your data, even if it's just with elevation, with the elevation that we provide globally out of the box, or
Yeah.
the new 3D base map, where some areas you have very detailed buildings, and some areas it's more like extruded polygons. But already that makes a difference, and you might be able to tell your story differently, or convey the message more effectively.
That's fun. All right, Arnold. So I want to ask: are there any cool features coming to 3D by anything you can talk about by Dev Summit? Or
You mean besides Viewshed?
yes, besides Viewshed, I'm gonna wait for Viewshed for Dev Summit demos.
For sure. Yeah, Viewshed is probably going to be sometime next year, but yeah, we'll still have to look into that to give a bit more of a specific release date. What we are working on at the moment, especially if we're looking at the Developer Summit release next March, a fun one I think worth mentioning is theming. That is going to be available for 3D and 2D, and it basically allows you to color a lot of the interactive tools that we provide so far. Like the measurement tool comes in orange, the snapping the snapping guides that we have for 3D editing are orange. And that's going to allow you to basically change that color and adjust it, for example, if to your branding, to your corporate identity, if you have a specific color there. And I think that's a lot of fun to change these colors and see how it looks like when all of a sudden all the tools appear in a different color.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Of course, things like media layer, I got a lot of attention in the web map this year, so we're adding support for that in 3D. We'll continue to work on editing, improve the whole experience around 3D model upload, and also for the editing point, line, and polygon features, we have a fun or effective tool coming up that's allowing you to not only have tooltips when you edit, but also enter the values in these tooltips. So if you draw a line, right now it will tell you how long that line is, and in the future you'll be able to really type in how long the line exactly is and
that is
stuff
cool.
like that. So yeah, we call it productive editing. It's kind of like the code name for that project. And I think one thing that folks are going to be excited to hear is that we're looking into support for 3D tiles, and we might have a prototype.
That's neat. Yeah, I know. As soon as 3D tiles were announced and other stuff, like the next stage, you're like, oh, why don't you guys support 3D tiles? Like, it just got announced. Can you give us a second?
how long do you need for it?
Yeah. That's cool, man.
Well, it's
That's
going to
awesome.
be fun if we can just hook those up and build some apps with that data for sure.
Oh, it's amazing. That's gonna be cool stuff, man. All right, Arno. So I don't want to hold you up too long here, but before I let you go, you got any tips, tricks, or other advice for listeners?
Oh yeah, right. Advice. So I listened to some of your previous podcasts, and I have some of that is really life advice, and I was thinking how to live up to those expectations. So one thing I can really recommend if you so speaking about next March, the Dev Summit, if you sign up. So I guess the first piece of advice is sign up for Dev Summit. Join us in Palm Springs. I think it's a great event to connect also to the team. And if you do that, make sure to in advance practice enough dodgeball, because we showed up this year kind of thinking like, hey, first time dodgeball after the pandemic and everything, and we definitely wanted to compete, and we saw it in previous years and thought, it can't be that hard, but oh boy, we got we got smashed. So it's not as easy
very seriously.
And you take it seriously.
It's competitive, right? Oh yeah, it's very competitive. There are some partners or companies that come over and stuff too that have their teams, right? And I think they're stocking their teams with the employees, right? Like they got some big people coming in now.
While we are preparing for all like the plenary presentations and the sessions and everything, put all the time, next year I really gotta also practice some dodgeball, because I think that's also one of the things that folks remember the most, besides all the other things that we present there, is like, hey, how did you perform in dodgeball?
Oh, that's awesome, Arno. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you being here, man. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Rennie. Nice talking to you.
Thank you for listening to The Bounding Box today. Please subscribe for more content.